I don't know how to start this. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel, I guess. We are doing an audio interview, which is not something that I have done in a long time. I guess this is sort of like a pseudo podcast episode, but we are here today with the one and only. Well, I don't know if I should use your real name or if you'd like to use your artist name. It's up to
Uh,
you.
yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. I've come up against some not pushback but confusion over the artist name, which I did not see coming. But yeah, no, my name is Michael Pementel. I create music under the artist name Dralone. It's spelled D-R apostrophe L and apostrophe O-N-E. You know, really convenient, but it's a play on drone and loan, so it's
Right. When I first
Dralone.
when I first heard it, I thought it was Dr. Lone.
Brother, if I had $1 for every time I've heard that, which I'm like, you know what? If that's how people want to read it, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. That's it's just Dralone, but again, the doctor thing is fine. I'm not gonna. I'll be cool.
You have a PhD in drone music.
Exactly.
And we're here for a reason, and that is because your debut full-length project is, by the time of this recording, it's not out yet, but it will be soon, and it is called Everywhere Underneath. Take us into the inspiration behind that title.
It'll be out December 26th.
Hmm.
It's everywhere underneath. Is that title is very much about feelings of anxiety, a life history of OCD. Everyone's experiences with mental illness are different, but for me, there's always been so much tension energy wise when it comes to my anxiety, things I feel with my muscles tension, subconsciously happening, developing years of like having like whether it's a cramp with like somewhere in my body constantly, and it's not because there's any like damage done to it, but because there's like some kind of psychosomatic connection to my anxiety. So mental illness is often looked at as just like shit that goes on in your brain, but for a lot of people I think they might agree that like, oh well, what's going on with your brain is actually happening throughout your body. I had a lot of stomach problems throughout this year, and I went to, the long story short without getting into the nitty gritty is I went to go get that checked out, and the doctor's just like, yeah, you're great actually, and I'm like, well, what do you think it could be? And he's just like, yeah, it might be stress. And I was like, motherfucker.
Of course, it's stress,
Yeah,
asshole.
of course. $1,000 in the hole due to stress. Whether I'm sitting by myself and I'm spiraling, or I'm at a party and I'm spiraling, I'm doing something I really enjoy and I'm not, and something's happening within me. There's sensation going on throughout. Like I can feel like this kind of like electricity jumping in my skin sometimes,
Mm,
and that sometimes leads to like I try to be very careful so no one sees it, but like
sure. Try to hide it.
like twitching almost.
Mm.
And so yeah, everywhere underneath is like I'm talking about my body.
Oh, it's fascinating. I had a feeling because some of these, we'll get into it later, but some of the songs they sound to me like something underneath your skin. Like if that makes any sense. Like some of the songs, like just sonically, it feels like, oh, this is something that is like festering in underneath my skin, inside my body.
That's pretty intentional.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to hear you say that. I've
Yeah.
gotten to hear like I obviously the record's not out yet, but there's a couple people who I'm you included, who I'm very close with, who I have shared several songs with. And I'm happy for all interpretations. I truly am. But that's the first time I've heard someone say that.
Well, of course. Well, nobody understands you like I do. So,
That's true. That's true. That's
so
why you're my little, yeah.
you
Thank you.
know,
My little daddy and big daddy.
that's right. Let's talk a little bit about the overall process of creating. What's the creative process like just for like do you have an idea for a song title first and you go, "Oh, what would this sound like?" Or is it more of you sit in front of whatever instrument you're using and you go, "What comes out of me?" Like what is it is it a chord first? Is it a sound? Is it something you've recorded? Like what take me into the process of how you create something.
Yeah. If I were to say right away, what is essential for me with making music is the act of play. Uh, there are some times where I have an idea in mind. Now, sometimes that idea doesn't like fully come to fruition, but that being said, even when I have like an intention about like, oh, I want to make something that elicits this feeling, or like this is what I'm feeling and I need to get that shit out of me, it all comes through. It all begins with the act of play. With the interfaces and tools that I'm using, I might know exactly where to start. Like I might know like I'm going to start with drums first, or I might start with like a piano first, or I might start with this kind of synthesizer effect first. And then like I'll go through the different typefaces that I have and play around. And I wait for something to, I know this is kind of vague and abstract, but I wait for something to emotionally resonate with me. This is very like generic to put it this way, so trust me, there's a little bit more to it than this. But like,
Okay.
if I'm looking for something where it's like I want to create an atmosphere that is sad, generally,
Right.
I will wait till I find a tone that does elicit that feeling out of me.
Sure. It makes sense to
There's a lot
me.
of, like with any creative practice, you want to play and have fun. And there's been definitely, like on various EPs or other, demos I've released beforehand, there's been songs I have released just because they sound cool.
Yeah.
But even if something just sounds quote unquote cool, there's always some kind of intention, oh yeah, the one that features my cat, it's on the cover. It's called Party for One. And that was the first, like, a lot of that music, there's an emotional connection there, but the emotional connection is because that EP was me experimenting with much more relatively poppier sounds.
Sure.
For the first time compared to anything else I was doing. The short version is play. I need to find something that I just need to have fun. I come from a journalistic background. I've been writing about art and media for like the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And I still write about it.
You've had a very long, storied career for the most part.
Yeah,
You've done a lot.
2025 is my 10-year anniversary. It's crazy.
That's a crazy to think about.
It is wild.
A decade.
Today, I still write about music. I love music, and my main drive there is because I love supporting musicians, and
of course,
it's also music is always where I've had community. Like, I was at a show last night. I literally bumped into an internet friend. And that music has offered me that, and I really love that.
Isn't that a wonderful feeling?
It's a great feeling.
You bump into the internet friend in real life, and you're like, oh, there's a body behind this screen person that I know.
So all that to say, the second part is once I do find that like emotional resonance, then I just build out, and I at that point it kind of like I don't know how to explain it to a person. It's just like maybe like a visual comes to mind when I am making something, and I lean into like I try to find the sounds that connect with that visual, or I try to think about how that visual can translate into a sound, and then if there's any connection between what I'm emotionally feeling.
That's fascinating. So it really does boil down to just kind of sitting there and playing around to see what emotionally resonates. I love that. I mean, I was going to transition into specific tracks that stuck out to me. But before I do that, I did want to ask you about some of your inspirations and influences. Maybe even your relationship to the genre of music that you are playing in.
Yeah, so I guess where to start? I'll start with my relationship.
Sure.
I love the umbrella of electronic music. I really, really love electronic music. It's funny because it's one of those genres that as a younger person, I'm 35, but as a younger person, I had such a horrible introduction to it.
Did you really?
And so I had this understanding that I just didn't like it because of the very little I understood.
Sure.
The exception would be being introduced to Daft Punk as a teenager.
Right.
I love Daft Punk. What I thought was electronic music was like the rise of like the Skrillex, Deadmau5 kind of stuff.
Right, that's sort of like that EDM meets like trap type sound.
Again, now that I know a great variety of artists, there's a lot of EDM and trap that I love.
Of course.
But what I was hearing there I didn't care for.
Sure.
And so it's like, and I could say the same thing about country music. No one told me about Johnny Cash or Waylon Jennings. I just thought it was fucking Jason Aldean and Tim McGraw.
That particular flavor of country music is so rooted in like this idea of like American exceptionalism and just
Yes.
sort of like cold beers, big trucks,
And it did
women.
nothing.
Yeah,
I did not feel moved.
it's
And
hollow.
so for a while, I just didn't care for electronic music. And again, like Daft Punk was the exception. I
Yeah,
remember, God, my first standout electronic record was actually their Tron soundtrack.
which is, by the way, incredible soundtrack. That's like that might be top 10.
And then I moved to Chicago in 2012 for school. I went to school for writing, and I met a buddy. He's still a good friend of mine today. But the long story short version is that he introduced me to a wealth of really interesting electronic artists. Particularly two I want to shout out are Boards of Canada and Flying Lotus. Boards of Canada does a lot. Like I don't want to simplify too much, and we could sit here forever. But
Sure.
they do a lot more ambient sort of material. And Flying Lotus is very much more like the IDM meets EDM meets hip hop meets noise meets breakbeat meets jazz. Lotus in particular has been a huge influence throughout my whole life in terms of just like enjoying art like that. And so that introduced me to electronic music being much more broader than I was even aware of, and it opened my world. Like, I don't want to characterize myself as like any one type of enjoyer, but I am predominantly more of a metalhead than anything else. I
Yeah.
really love metal. And 2017 was a really big year for me discovering new acts that would become very big contemporary favorites of mine, but also like greatly shift my taste. I really fucking adore the music of Kristen Hayter.
I clocked that the
Yeah.
second I knew. I was like, I know where you're going. Haha. And as
I've
me too.
had the chance to work with Kristen before for like interviews and stuff. She's a wonderful human
Oh
being.
yeah, seems like a gem. Yeah.
She's wonderful, but and for anyone who's not familiar, oh sorry, you might hear my cat. She's up and about.
That's fine. You're probably gonna hear both of mine.
For anyone who's not familiar with just her name, for listeners and whatnot, Kristen used to perform under the name Lingua Ignota. In 2017, she released her. Oh my god, I think it's her. I hope it's her debut LP. It's either her debut or the first LP she really became known for, and that's All Bitches Die. I remember I was in a little bit of a funk with music at this time. I was kind of struggling. Like all the death metal I really liked was like it was the kind of death metal that was like it sounds good, but that's because it's like so cleanly produced, and I was struggling to connect with anything emotionally at the time. I think I was also like dealing with some burnout. And then I just checked out this record because I was like, yeah, the title is shocking. And it was genuinely one of those I have never heard anything like that.
Right. It was sort of this like brand new experience for you, and at the time you were everything felt flat.
Now in hindsight, like I more clearly recognize what she's doing there with like death metal and industrial music.
Right.
But like her combination of metal elements, which she has greatly abandoned since, but death metal with industrial music and noise and atmosphere it's fucking astounding. That record is I think if someone had asked me to think about like a horror record, like a record that conveys horror, like just makes you uncomfortable and afraid and tense and can twist your stomach. All Bitches Die is easily one of those records. It's also I would advise a strong content warning.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's definitely not a record that you recommend
Very
lightly.
much exploring like essay and
Yeah.
stuff like that. There was also another big favorite for me is the doom sludge noise band Rid of Man, and they had just released around that time Caustic.
That's right.
I think that's their second LP.
I
If I
think you're
remember
right.
correctly, because there's Scorn before that. But
Yeah.
I love that record. That did a lot for me. Now, funny enough, that record does not have as many noise elements as future records of theirs would, but I want to put a pin in that. I think this was 2017. It was Trumpeting Ecstasy by Full of Hell. And so I say all this to say that these noise elements they started for me the interest and the excitement for them started with bands that were using them in an adjacent manner.
Sure.
Like you wouldn't necessarily call them noise or electronic acts.
Right.
Primitive Man, for example, is extremely much more doom metal and sludge metal.
Yeah, but it was those elements that stood out to you though
Those
the
elements really
most.
stood out to me, and
Yeah.
it was. I know this word gets thrown around so much, but there was a truly cinematic element, and there was also something about the noise chaos alongside doom that I do personally find, and I understand how this might be weird to some people, but there is something extremely calming in it. I think it's because my brain is always racing so fucking badly. Like I don't know how to describe it to someone. Like I think maybe like sometimes it's like just having like you're trying to talk to someone and then someone just turned on the TV and then they turn the TV all the way up and
Ugh.
you're trying to have that conversation with someone but the TV is fucking blaring. That's a lot of
That's
how my
incredibly
brain works.
overwhelming. Too many noises. Too many sounds.
And then like so when I purposely try to find something that is like very intense and it is also that chaotic or it's like very booming and droning, um, it's almost like the beats and the rhythm are matching my flow.
Oh, that is
Um,
fascinating.
yeah. And granted, I'm very thankful over the years. Slower music has also had like a major fucking help to my mental health.
Of
You know,
course.
she's it started out very adjacent, and then like I don't know, dude. Like it's really tough to like create a line. It just the interest just gradually built over the years, and it act like an acclimated sense. You know, like what
Sure.
are the differences between 2017 and 2025? Is that 8 years?
Something
Something
like
like
that.
that.
Math is
It
silly.
just yeah, it just built. You know, it's like, well, I do like this, and then I would be introduced to another band that incorporated elements of like noise elements into their work, and then I would check that out, and then I would find more bands like that. I would find more bands like that, and then eventually I would find a band that did that to a much greater degree, and I would get into that, and just slowly built until I was starting to listen to much more noise centric artists, whether it's if you pronounce her name is Pharmacon, there's Uboa, there's Lana Del Reyes.
I've heard of
Um,
Lana Del Reyes.
yeah,
I've heard of Lana Del Reyes.
she's fucking sick, dude. She just put out a new record called Omnipotent Fuck. Um,
That's
it's
incredible.
it's it's easily in my top 25. I'm doing a 25 for 2025 this year. I love that fucking record. I don't really talk about this with many people, but there is
That's
like
fine.
when I talk about this music having like an emotional resonance for me, there is something very um, for lack of better phrasing, significant lack of better phrasing,
Hmm.
there is something very spiritual to it for me.
Sure.
Spirituality, religion has always been a very touchy, raw subject in my life.
Of course.
Very, very difficult for me to talk about. I have a lot of fears. I have a lot of anxieties I don't express. Um, I have some conflict in my life when it comes to like family and spirituality in my life, and so it's a tough thing for me to explore and talk about. And for me, I think the closest I get to any idea of quote unquote God is well, one nature, but art. Art is
I think
arguably the closest I get to the idea of a God.
sure. I think the idea of like art being a, for lack of a better term, a pseudo spiritual or religious experience is, I think that's a fair comparison to make. I think that art is, whether it's creation or experiencing art. I'm not going to use the word consuming because that's yucky, but like the experiencing of art or the creation of art is in and of itself a spiritual experience. It just doesn't have to be spiritual in an organized religion sense.
Yeah, and like the like in the yeah, you're like right in like the literal sense. Like
Yeah,
there is art that is literal in its like content. There's like Catholic Christian meat rock, and there is
like
like
Creed.
Zen like Buddhist meditative work. Like there is
Right.
music that is much more literal in that. And I would be lying if I said some of that didn't resonate with me.
Sure.
One of my favorite record of this year has very explicit references to Zen Buddhism, and that is one of the spiritualities that does personally click with me. I don't consider myself 100% Zen Buddhist,
Of course.
but it is something that I've taken a lot of lessons from and I do carry in my life. Not that other music doesn't have it, like I listen to a lot of a lot of country. I listen to a
Sure.
lot of metal. I listen to a lot of hip hop. I listen to a lot of jazz.
You're everywhere.
But within within ambient and drone and noise, there is a very specific quality that I find beautifully calming. That I feel like it's music that really like that reflects my process of thinking.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's what I would say. And so yeah, like that's what my ultimate relationship to it is. There is this like, you know, it's spiritual and it's emotional and it gives me, for lack of better phrasing, an external factor that reflects my mind state. Inspirations also can be like, you know, I know this might sound a little hoity-toity, but just life.
Yeah.
You know, I pull a lot from movies. Um, there's another song on this record where it's called "I Ache and Ache and Ache," and the ending of that song reflects a very specific. Like I pulled some inspiration from the horror movie Saint Maud for the ending. Um, And so movies are a big one, paintings are a big one, architecture is another big one. Sometimes I like to think about like how just like wind blowing or snow blowing or rain blowing around a
Mm.
building, what would that sound like in music?
Mm.
Um, I said painting, I think colors, trees. I have a field recording track on this record. Getting into field recordings has also been a really genuine spiritual practice for me. Like
Hmm.
I am much more. I love walking with my headphones. I love
Of
it.
course.
But at the same time, I've also developed a greater appreciation for just going out into the world out my headphones and then listening to the world around me. Not listening in on conversations at a cafe, but listening to like the blend and noise of conversation and ceramics and
Mm.
espresso orders. Um, and so all that to say is like it's made me a much more attentive, deep listener. I like a lot of deep listening experiences. Not that I'm against things that are just like playful for the hell of being playful and fun. But like I like art that forces you to focus on something. And you know, if I could circle back to inspirations, you know, I know I talked about a lot of music stuff. It's also important that whether it's my writing or music or what have you, um, David Lynch has been a massive inspiration for me in my life. Probably the closest I get to like actual like obsessive hero worship. There's a lot of artists I
Sure.
love and adore. Like I mentioned Ethan and I mentioned Kristen, but David is someone who I absolutely like love and really wish I could have met or worked with at some point, like
Sure.
a quick interview. So that was important for me to just share. But yeah, all that to say, field recordings, it's a new world for me, and I love exploring it, and I wanted to do it myself, and I'm definitely going to keep doing it.
Good. The sonic palette that you were painting with is very broad. On this, I would say you'll have a track like "Worth," which is a cool minute and 30, and it's just the sound on that is insane. And then you'll listen to Metamorphosis, a 10.5 minute song. Where is this going? And every few minutes you go, oh, the layers that build throughout Metamorphosis is, to me, beautiful. When you asked me to conduct this interview to talk to you about this record, I had this moment where I go, I like the songs that you're putting out, but I go, this isn't really my genre of expertise. This isn't really something that I listen to. And I had this moment of hesitation where I was like, am I the right person to do this? Like, do I open my mind and my ears to this experience because because I love you and you're very important to me, and do I do this because I love you, or do I do this because I want to also experience things? Do I want to experience a genre that you love as well? Do I open my ears and my heart to this as well? And when I got to Metamorphosis, it like clicked for me.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your honesty.
Of course.
I think that's incredibly beautiful of you, and I really appreciate it. Yeah. You know, I think you know, I'm totally open and respectful to people's tastes. Like, you know, there's plenty of things that I like that other people don't like, and there's plenty of things people like that I'm not super crazy for. But I think the great thing about one of the beautiful things about art, or maybe the beautiful thing about art, is community and connecting with people over
Mm,
things. Like, I love giving things a chance, even if I don't ultimately end up liking them. I love when people share bands with me or share artists with me, because it just gives us something to talk about, and it gives me something new to explore. And so I love that, and I really respect and appreciate your open-mindedness.
of course.
I know it's not something we've really talked much about.
Mm-mm.
I talk on my very little social media about the stuff I like, and I know it's quite different in your taste. So I really admire your openness and your critical ear and
Of course.
So I appreciate your honesty there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I can't control how people choose to listen to stuff. I
Sure.
can't control. There's a lot of intention, and I think that goes for any artist, or maybe not. Some people are just like, listen, I put this out there. The artist is dead. As soon as you experience it, it's yours. And I do respect that. So at the end of the day, as long as it brings people joy, that's ultimately what I care about. That's
Yeah.
the number one thing. Get rid of ego and everything.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is for me. You know,
Right.
I don't get into specifics. I remember reading things. Um, it was the second. I hesitate to use the word single. I remember releasing the second song, "Madness, Madness, Madness," and a friend shared with me their interpretation of it, and I was both hit with like, "Wow, that's so cool that that's how the song connected with you," and then also that's absolutely not what's going on there.
Right. Yeah.
But like again, at the end of the day, it's like I can make something for me. Like if no people were to listen to this, I did something that I will revisit because it emotionally helped me. It really did help me in so many ways to make this record,
Of
and to
course.
just be making music and art has really helped me with a lot of stuff in my life. So when you go back to talking about listening deeply, that is what I would like.
Of course. Yeah. I
I
feel like any artist would want their the person experiencing their art to like really go into it with.
I do. Listen, I like. I know myself. Where it's like, unfortunately, I can get a little elitist and on my soapbox about this subject.
Sure.
I really struggle with the idea of like second screen content. Like when I put on a movie, even if I've seen that movie, maybe if I've seen the movie 101 times, I might check my phone. But
Sure.
if I've only seen that fucker 100 times, I want to watch the movie.
Yeah. I understand that.
When I put on a record, I'm not even crazy for listening to music at work because I want to just listen to the music. Yeah, if I had it my way, people would do deep listening with this because I did like. I'm glad there's a specific word you said, layering. For me, there's a lot of intention with layering.
Yeah. I could
I
tell.
have tried to create experiences and soundscapes on this record where there's obviously the notion and literal technical effect of drone is a big component to this record, but you're gonna if you listen deep enough, you're gonna find intricacies that I hope bring you deeper into the song. I wanted to try and create a psychic connection where the person hears this great booming experience, or maybe it's even this minimal experience, and but as they're listening, maybe they notice something underneath. And it's like, what's
Mm,
this little thing I hear underneath? And it brings them
right.
deeper into the song.
Like
And
what's this feeling that this is eliciting in me? Like I need to go deeper in.
yes,
The intention is important, and I think a deeper listen is warranted if you want to truly understand what the point of the view that you're writing from, if that makes any sense. I think the deeper listen is important here.
yeah,
Um,
I think so. Because, I mean, to be very fair, what I'm doing is not popular media or
sure.
popular art. Like, it's art that not only does it have a much more niche following and a much more niche fandom, but the creation of it, for the most part, of course there are exceptions, but the creation of it for the most part is incredibly abstract. It's the difference between people reading something like, I don't know, fucking take X fantasy book versus like House of Leaves. I like both, but I'm a really big fan of the latter. And so I understand the barrier to entry. I genuinely do understand a barrier to entry, and which is why intention is incredibly important to me.
What was your, because we mentioned this song earlier, what was your intention behind the constant moment. Because to me, this is a song that stood out amongst, other than Metamorphosis and say Stillness Hold Me, this was a song that to me stood out crazy, especially towards, I would say, the middle and middle towards the back end of the song. There's the sound that plays in the back. It's almost like this warbling sound, and it is, for lack of a better term, that's just how my brain took that in. But there's something happening towards the back end of that song that makes you feel uneasy.
I think the constant moment would hopefully works for people who have ever been at a social gathering and had a panic attack.
That's that is
Um,
literally where my brain took that. I was like, it feels like I'm having a panic attack at a Wegmans in the frozen food section. I'm like, oh, there's too many people here. These everything's too pricey. I was like, I'm freaking out, which is a real thing that happened to me. That's beside the
oh damn.
point. But that's what the constant moment made me think about, was like, remember that time you had a panic attack at a grocery
Mm.
store and
Yeah,
how
no,
evil you felt?
I feel that this track is much more centered around the idea of, not again, your experience is extremely valid. I hear
Thank you.
you.
Wegmans sucks.
I This is more catered to the idea of being around like a get together of loved ones, people I
Mm.
love being around and I adore, but there is something pulling me away from the experience. And the drone effect is meant to, at least in my mind, stir that unease. And as I was writing that song, I just felt myself sifting in that space of sadness,
Yeah.
and in that space of like growing more agitated and more uncomfortable. And then I was just playing around with different effects, and then I came across these digital vocal effects,
Mm.
and I was like, oh, this sounds like people talking, but they're not saying
Ah,
any
yeah.
words. Like
Oh,
it's
fuck.
all mumbled bullshit.
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
And I'm like, that's what it's like to be staring at someone in the face and they're talking to you, but like inside you want to fucking scream, or maybe you just got to the party and it's only been 20 minutes and you have 3 hours ahead of you.
Now that I think about it, yeah. People saying stuff, but you're not, it just comes out as mumbling. You just don't hear
You're
it.
yapping now. You're
Yeah.
yapping them, being like, yeah, yeah, oh, cool, neat, yeah, yeah.
Something we're all guilty of.
That's the thing, it's like, and thankfully I have such a truly beautiful community of loved ones. So if
Good.
I wanted to, I could absolutely vocalize my discomfort, and I have. At 35, I've gone significantly better with communication.
Good.
But
As you should.
even now, I still feel some embarrassment, and so like my brain is like, oh yeah, it's better to repress it. It's similar to like when you have a friend in the middle, like telling you their exciting plans for the past week. My brain is just like, oh no, it would probably be healthier if you could just be like, hey, so and so, I have to step into the bathroom and like breathe.
Another song I wanted to talk to you about was the closer on the album, Stillness Hold Me.
Sure.
We talked about the field reporting.
Yeah.
Um, what what was your, because we've used this word before. What was your intention with Stillness Hold Me? Because there's how it hit my ears. I felt alone. I was alone in a field and just letting the world happen around me. It felt very singular to me. It felt very like, isolated is the wrong word, but I felt alone in an open space.
I mean that kind of describes a lot of what was going on.
Mm.
I wrote that song. Sorry, I didn't write. Well, I did write that song. I started the
I
recording
was gonna say,
process.
you wrote this damn thing. You wrote.
I did write the song. Yes. What I mean to say is, the main recording of that song was done in the actual land is escaping me. I apologize, but I was in Pennsylvania with my spouse and their family. Um, and I was just like, hey, I'm gonna hang back. I'm gonna do some recordings, and I found this bench that overlooks this river. We do a nature walk every Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
We do a few, but there's a main one we do every Thanksgiving morning, and I love this forest, this park. And again, the name is escaping me. I apologize, but I found this bench that overlooks the river, and I put the recorder down, and I just sat and listened. I tried to forget that the phone was there. And I tried to create enough space between me so you couldn't hear people talking, and then I just let the recorder do its thing while I just thought about the river moving. I just noticed some like branches that were like barely holding on, that had been snapped. Um, at one point, you might hear a pen click, and that's just because I start journaling about what it's like to sit there. I was working on a poem related to what I was feeling in the moment, and so yeah, there's a lot of isolation, but all that to say, the intention behind that was I wanted to end on, for lack of better phrasing, an uplifting moment.
Yeah,
I really,
I got that from that experience as well. It wasn't sort of like a malevolent aloneness. It felt almost hopeful.
yeah, I wouldn't. Making this record has been so rewarding and wonderful and happy. I've been so happy making this album.
Yeah, you can
All
tell.
that to say that much of the content on the record itself is quite negative. And Stillness Hold Me is a reminder. It was an act that I wrote. It's an act of gratitude. I wrote that song to as like a reminder both to myself, but also as a message to the audience who may possibly relate. Um, that there is some gratefulness to have in life, whether it's the loved one or loved ones you have in your life, or the little activities you have for yourself that bring you joy. And for me, like I said earlier, the closest I get to the idea of a god is art in nature. But also, I would also add my loved ones.
Of course.
Being with them is also like maybe an act of God. So yeah, I wanted to express and write something that embraced gratefulness.
Let's talk about the thematic scope overall of the record. What are your goals in creating these tracks?
To repeat a thing I said earlier, like I have a pretty long career being a journalist, and I love it and I enjoy it. But not to get too in the weeds about it, I have also struggled with a pretty bad career complex in like it becoming very obsessional with like trying to make money from it, very obsessional about career being my purpose, my identity. And it's not only weighed on me so much existentially in terms of the idea of purpose, but it's made me a curmudgeon at times. Um, it's taken joy away from my life having that kind of obsession. Where, like I said, I really get so much joy just helping artists and helping musicians and shining a light on art that I really like. Um, and it took an experience in 2024 to get laid off from a job to help ground me, to be like, wow, I've been neglecting my mental health for so long, and I really, if I continue like this, I'm going to drive myself into the dirt. And so I did a lot of stuff to help rewire my brain to get to a much healthier place. And one of the things that's been helping do that is making art and also really embracing a mindset of just making art genuinely for me. Like there is no like I again, I've worked 10 years in the journalistic field of music, and I know so many working musicians and people I work alongside and I've interviewed who like there is that hustle grind mindset of like you make your music, but you also like do art design for other bands, or maybe you also sell guitars and you also do this and you also do that, so you don't have to get like another day job and you can just make art making your life.
The goal isn't monetary gain.
It's not. If you want to give me money for it, that's cool. I'll take it. But I am not asking for
Sure.
that. Genuinely, I guess my ultimate goal with this and anything I do is just to be happy. I have sometimes felt like ungrounded. Well, I've often felt ungrounded and like struggling with ideas of purpose and like needing to label myself like, oh, I'm going to be happy once I do this, or I'm going to be happy once I get that, or I'm going to be happy once this comes into my life. Making art does give me a sense of purpose, but there's not a label to it. I have fun with it, and there's catharsis, there's therapy, there's maybe making other people happy, there's maybe helping other people who are going through shit. That's ultimately my goal. is to just create and put more good into the world.
I think that is a beautiful sentiment to end on. And I think with that, we will wrap it up.
Thank you so
Before,
much.
of course, before I let you go, tell everybody what you got, where they can find you, where they can listen to you, where they can experience the art that you've created.
Sure.
Plug
So
yourself.
at the time of this interview, December 21st, 2025,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever this comes out, which I assume will be relatively close-ish, I am only on Bandcamp. I think ideally, and I have no timeline for this, no timeline, but right now I'm on Bandcamp, and for the foreseeable future, I'm only on Bandcamp.
Mm-hmm.
I will never be on a streaming service. You sure as shit will never find me on Spotify. You will
Good.
not find me on Apple. You will not find me on Tidal. Blah blah blah. I'm on Bandcamp because even though it is owned by Epic, and I'm not a fan of that, artists do get a much better financial treatment on there. And another part of my practice is also as much as I don't care about my personal payout, with the exception of when I do charities. I do charities where it's like I'll release something and then for like the next month, everything I make I will donate to X charity.
Sure.
So outside of that, that's when I love to get money. But I use Bandcamp to be like, oh hey, I know streaming is convenient, but this stuff brings us a lot of joy, so let's pay the artists. So it's not perfect, but it is relatively much better compared to other streaming services. I do this also with Substack. I don't know my fucking URL to save my life. I'm gonna have to look that up.
That's fine. You can obviously you'll send me those. I can put them in the thing.
Oh yeah, look for it in Devin's Doobly Doo thing. But yeah, I have a Substack where I just write about random shit. I don't write essays as much as I wish I did, but sometimes I do. But I have an open, it's very new as of the past few months, but I do what's called an open artist diary. It's something that I've seen out of other artists, like Jacob Bannon of Converge and then Claire Rousey, where I just talk about what I'm working on and what I'm thinking. It's very bloggish. There's no financial incentive there. It's literally just for the sake of talking to people. If people want to talk to me, or just sharing stuff, and anyone wants to listen. So yeah, I have a Substack, which comes as a newsletter, or you can read on Substack if you want. And then yeah, Bandcamp. You can find my personal Bandcamp at Michael Pementel. You can also find Drone's Bandcamp, which is again that is DRLONE. Right now, again, you can find all my previously released demos and EPs and 2 singles I have. Right now, likely by the time you hear this, I'm assuming, I could be wrong. The record will be out because it's out this 26th.
Yeah, it'll be out by then.
Okay, so yeah, right now the record is technically on pre-order. I'm literally only doing pre-order just so I could showcase and preview the current first 3 songs.
Mm-hmm.
If you wait till the 26th, and again, by the time you hear this, it'll probably be the 26th. That most of my models, I have not changed it since. Most of my paid models are pay what you want. Again, I'm not looking to make a ton of money out of this. If you want to throw me anything, that's totally your call. I appreciate it. But yeah, if you just wait till the 26th, you can get it for free if you want, or you can throw me $1. I just want to be happy and make art, and I want to connect with people. And if people get anything out of my art, that's awesome. So all that to say, you can find me on Substack. Devin will have the links in his description. You can also find Drolone, that's DRLONE, on Bandcamp. And if you want to see my personal Bandcamp, that's Michael Pementel, also on Bandcamp. And so that's where people can find me. But as far as 2026 is concerned, I have 3 specific projects to Drolone that I am going to have. The first is going to be a new EP. I don't know how many songs, but it'll be at least more than one. that will be out in January. I have a specific date in mind. I'm going to really try to make that date. I'm not going to say what it is here because I'll say the date here and then not make it. All I'll just say is we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of David Lynch's death, and
Mm-hmm.
it's about that.
Oh, okay.
That's all I'll say for now.
Good.
And
Don't give it away. Don't give away too much.
what I will also say is also going to be charity related.
Okay, good.
So more details to come. And if you ever want to know what those details are like, I list them in my Substack. I list them in my Bandcamp sometimes. I'm also fine with actually giving away my personal Instagram because right now I do not have an artist Instagram. So
Sure.
Devin can also link that
Sure.
too.
100%.
After that, there's also a poetry, very mini, I guess, chapbook for Everywhere Underneath that is also coming out sometime after. The record does not have any vocals, it does not have any lyrics, but I wanted to do at least a very tiny multimedia element to it, and poetry was natural for me. So by no means is the poetry prescriptive. You absolutely do not need the poetry to go along with the music. But if you're someone who's like, oh, I'm curious about a little bit of the intention going on here, the poetry provides somewhat of an idea into where my head was at, where my head is at in each of these songs, without spelling things out. Again, I don't want to spell things out. Part of me worries I might have spelled things out too much on this call, but I think
It's the
I
magic of
think that
editing, brother.
I think people can listen to the music and also draw their own conclusions or make even their own connections. Yeah, so the poetry book is the next thing after the EP, and then I don't have a date in mind, but then I already know what my next record's going to be, my next full length. So that will be out sometime in
Ah,
2026.
hey, well, maybe we'll get to do this again for that one too. Everybody, Dralone, Michael Pementel, Everywhere Underneath is the album out December 26th, 2025. And I hope everybody who listens to this goes out and gives it a shot. Michael, thank you very much for being a part of this. Thank you for letting me
Thank
do
you.
this.
Thank you, Devin.
And yeah, have a good night or day, everyone. And I will see you in the next one.